Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. I am Jet. That is Sap. If you are lucky enough to be watching on YouTube, youtube.com/JetStryer, you will see the glorious visages of our faces. Sap's in front of a door, mine in front of many posters. I don't know if you've noticed, Sap, this boxing poster behind me is actually not a boxing poster. It is Larry Bird knocking out Magic Johnson. And it says 86th on it.
Okay. Well, just so you know, Jet, they met 3 times in the finals. Magic's team won 2 out of 3, and they did meet for the national championship in college. Magic won. So Magic 3-1 against Bird, so it must have been a lucky punch.
In fairness, Magic Johnson had a lot better teammates on that Michigan State team than Larry Bird had on the Indiana State team.
He had Greg Kessler, who had a decent NBA career, but he got drafted, I think, 4th in the 79 draft because of Magic Johnson. He basically was just running down the court and getting alley-oops from Magic.
Which team had more high-level recruits, do you think? Michigan State or Indiana State?
Michigan State.
Did anybody know where Indiana State was before Larry Bird?
Well, it was in Indiana, hopefully. Hopefully they knew it was in Indiana. It was not in some other state. Carl Nix was a guard for Indiana State who was drafted in the first round, but really never made it. I'm sure Greg Kessler and Carl Nix should, whatever money they've made since that game, should maybe give 5% to Larry Bird and Magic Johnson because they were made famous by those 2 all-time great players. But that's pretty cool. That's almost like now, obviously Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowl titles and Peyton Manning has 2. But Peyton Manning's 3-1 against Brady in AFC Championship games. Just those are facts. I know that, is a turnoff for Brady fans, who I think is the greatest quarterback ever, without question. But just to let you know, Manning 3-1 in AFC
Manning
Championship
also
games.
Had to change the rules to in order to beat the Patriots. You weren't allowed to check the wide receivers at the line of scrimmage anymore.
And Brady deflated football, so
no,
they're even.
He didn't. That is called science, Sap. And when it gets colder, I don't know. Oh, you don't drive, so you don't know these things. Tire pressure.
There's a real dirty remark to me.
People who agree with you are Colts fans and Bill Nye, who is not really a scientist but plays one on TV.
I got some journalist friends who believe that he was deflating footballs. He wasn't.
Aaron Rodgers inflates footballs. What's the difference?
He's better.
Okay, he's not. Well, it's neither here or there. This is a great poster of a very true moment in time where Larry Bird knocked out Magic Johnson in the boxing ring.
But that wasn't 1986, though. It was 1984. 86, they beat the Rockets. So, it
just says the 86th is a terminology,
I know what it is. I mean, is Bill Russell, do we have a poster of Bill Russell that says 69? Because he won
bought it. That would be funny. I do want that one. I got this at the Boston Comic Con back.
He also won 10 other
back in the glory days when you could go to Comic Cons. I don't know when the next one of those is going to be.
No.
But I just wanted to point that out, that you have a door behind you. I have a factually incorrect poster. I understand.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I'm suffering through a sore pectoral muscle.
Oh, what'd you do to it?
Yeah. Well, what happened was, as you know, I'm a neat freak, a germaphobe, so I blend right in perfectly with the pandemic. Nothing's really changed for me. I stay away from people. I'm constantly wiping things down, walking around in masks as I've done for years. So I'm fitting right in. So yesterday was cleaning day, so I go into the bathroom. I want to take my shower curtain off and wash it at the laundromat. But
was it every day cleaning day?
Well, pretty much. But I mean, this is deep cleaning, right? I mean, it's not like I don't do anything every day. But I took the pole off because I wanted to clean the pole, take those little snaps off, and then bring the shower curtain and the liner to the not the dry cleaner. I'm not that nuts. To the laundromat.
You're cleaning the shower pole, Sap. You're pretty nuts.
I was cleaning the shower pole, and by grabbing it and stuff, I kind of stretched my pectoral muscle. I was not aware I had a pectoral muscle.
That sounds like a baseball player injury to me, right? They always get the funniest tripping over their dog.
I will not be able to do the podcast for 2 weeks.
Trevor Bauer cut his finger on a drone, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Someone got hurt, moving, and they stubbed their toe on a box or something.
Yeah, that's a baseball player. Let me ask you this, Sap. The pole that holds the shower curtain.
Yes.
How does that get dirty? It's in the shower. Why do
I
you
know,
need to
but
clean it?
there can be mildew in there because you got a lot of different temperatures, and there's germs that you want to take off. So I take it off, and I clean it with those wipes, the Clorox wipes. Take the little snaps off, put them in the sink to clean, and then when I go to the laundromat, I clean the outside curtain and the liner. So it's
Excessive.
like I got a new thing.
Very
Of course
excessive.
it is. It is.
Yeah,
I'm
it's crazy.
insane. I'm Howard Hughes without the billions.
Yeah, it's not a normal thing to do. The shower cleans everything. You don't have to worry about it. The shower cleans all. You don't have to clean things that have been in the shower.
It's not a car wash, Jed. It's a shower, so you got to be,
I treat it.
Stay
as
on top of these things. All right. Well, you have a cleaning woman, probably.
We do use Merry Maids. They come once a month.
Yeah,
I protest. I think it's a waste of money. My wife says I'm not good enough at cleaning to justify not having Merry Maids once a month.
Be nice to your wife, happy life. Get the cleaning people. That's fine.
Yeah, I think they half-ass it for the amount of money that we pay them to come once a month.
They're not cheap either.
They're not cheap. No, I protest, but I'm not winning that argument, and
just go along. That. She lets you watch NBA basketball, 9 hours a day, so just go along.
She does. She does let me do my Celtics post-game shows when she's asleep. She's nice enough to let me, wake her up for the 15 minutes that I spend ranting and raving about.
Right.
What I've learned, Sap, is that, I've been doing these now this is the second year I do every Celtics post-game reaction. The people who watch much prefer it when they lose because the shows aren't good when they win. I'm just like, oh yeah, they did a nice job here and there and there. And when they lose, I'm ranting and raving. Danny Ainge needs to go throw eggs at his house. And so I think people have started to root against the Celtics because they want the post games to be more.
It's interesting you say that because I had a friend who used to bet one game a night for $30, and his girlfriend liked when he would lose the bet because the sex was better after he lost the bet. So she was rooting against him.
This is my version of the sex is better.
Exactly. I mean, could you imagine doing a nightly Utah Jazz podcast? Like, first of all, no one would watch. They're always winning, but no one really thinks they're going to go to the championship. You got LeBron James, making fun of them at the All-Star draft. So that would be kind of boring. The Celtics,
yesterday, you forgot about Donovan Mitchell when we were doing our top 25.
Right. I left him
Didn't even remember him.
Then I elevated him up to number 3, and everybody else had to slide down.
Shaq makes fun of Rudy Gobert every night on his show.
And they got the best record in basketball. No one even takes them seriously. So at least you're doing
they have for basically since the opening gun. They've had the best record for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a case they're the best NBA franchise without a title, right? I mean, that's a whole other podcast maybe at some point.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
I would think the Utah Jazz, I mean, they've gone to 2 finals and lost with Malone and Stockton. They're always kind of in there, right? I would say the Denver Nuggets are another team that never won an NBA championship. In fact, never been to the NBA finals. They've been pretty good.
Yeah, twice, though. I'd say it's probably Utah. You're probably right there. I'm trying to think who else it could possibly be. It's not the Clippers.
No, not generally. No, they've sucked for many, many years. So, yeah, I mean, Utah and Denver are always in contention somehow, but never can break through.
It is funny that the expansion Raptors were able to get there win a title before the Jazz. So
the Heat have 3. They were an expansion team.
That's true. They do have 3, and who knows in the near future? As long as Pat Riley's there, they're going to be probably trying to compete for more.
No. Unless LeBron wants to finish his career there, they're not winning.
Well,
again.
I heard a rumor, and we'll talk about this at another show, that Kawhi Leonard could be interested in going to the Heat this offseason, potentially.
I mean, Jimmy Butler would be interesting. Yeah, that would be interesting.
I don't know.
Okay.
But we'll talk about 2 guys that are likely to be in the finals this year, and that is Brooklyn and LA, which we've telegraphed basically the whole year, led by the guys who were the all-star captains, Kevin Durant and LeBron James, though Kevin Durant didn't end up playing. LeBron played like 5 minutes in that game. But they were the most popular vote getters. So that poses the question, Sap, and I know what your answer is, and I actually am going to spoil it and say I think it's the right answer. Which star is going to have the bigger impact on the title, Kevin Durant or LeBron James?
It has to be LeBron James, right? Because he's going up against a stacked deck. Let's say everyone is healthy. We get to the finals in July, and it's the Nets against the Lakers. Okay, the Lakers come at you with LeBron, Anthony Davis. Who's their third best player? Is it Andre Drummond? Is it Dennis Schroeder? Good players, but not great players. The Nets come at you with their best player being Kevin Durant, followed by James Harden, followed by Kyrie Irving, followed by LaMarcus Aldridge, Jeff Green, Joe Harris, who's a knockdown three-point shooter. Blake Griffin's like the seventh or eighth guy on that team. So obviously, as it was in 2017 and 2018, LeBron's going up against the super team. He has to play near perfect basketball, play at or beyond the level he's never reached just to be in the series. That's going to be the theory going into it. Now, I don't think this Brooklyn team is as good as that Golden State team was in 2017 and 2018.
They're not.
That just fit better because that team had a better culture. They played better defense. They had more reliable players than Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and even Draymond Green. Who knows? Is Kyrie going to quit and join the circus in July?
And
they had
James
Harden going to be heavy, and they had won, right? And it was a stable situation, whereas Brooklyn is very toxic. I mean, that thing could blow up at any moment. It feels like the Kardashians, right? I mean, Harden, if he starts discovering strip clubs in New York, may lose concentration. And again, Kyrie's not a reliable guy. But there's more responsibility, more pressure on LeBron because
certainly a more difficult opponent than the Heat were presented last year.
Absolutely, that was his easiest opponent in the finals ever by a long stretch. I mean, he lost to Dallas, a team he should have beat. He beat Oklahoma City, a team that actually the Heat were underdog in that series because Oklahoma City had home court advantage and they had the three great young stars.
They shouldn't have been underdogs in that series.
They were ridiculous. Though because OKC had home court advantage and they had beaten the Spurs to get there. So there was that to play in. So LeBron, again, is going up against the team that is better than his team. So he's going to have to play at a very high level. The Lakers would not win that series unless LeBron goes for, 30, 12, and 12.
And yet I feel like Anthony Davis is the ace in the hole in that series, right?
Right, because I don't think you can't.
They have nobody who can defend him.
No. And look, no one has anybody to defend Durant, but he may miss his shots or whatever the case may be. And that
paint
puts
defense
a lot of pressure.
is the weakness of Brooklyn. Is
right.
They can't defend bigs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I look at Davis as the ace in the hole there.
Davis is the X factor because we kind of know what LeBron's going to give you, right? Like he did not have a good series against Dallas in 2011. Other than that, his finals play has been impeccable. I mean, he's played better in losing series than Kawhi Leonard played in the finals and winning series and ultimately winning finals MVPs. So there's way more pressure on LeBron. It almost feels a little bit like the most recent NFC Championship game. We had Tom Brady against Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to obviously bring Rodgers into this because he's my favorite football player, like LeBron is my favorite basketball player. There was less margin for error for Aaron Rodgers because Tampa Bay had a better all-around team. Brady threw 3 interceptions in the NFC Championship game. Now, Rodgers could have played better in that game, should have played better. But Brady was still able to win despite throwing 3 interceptions because he had a better defense and they were able to win, go up to Lambeau and move on to the Super Bowl. So it's a similar dynamic, right? So, Brady being like Kevin Durant, less a bigger margin for error, whereas Rodgers is like LeBron. And that's often been the case with Rodgers and LeBron. They don't necessarily have all the pieces around them. They have to kind of make everybody better. That puts a lot of pressure on those great players. So I think there's way more pressure on LeBron than Kevin Durant in this perceived NBA Finals.
Yeah, I think that, if Kevin Durant has an off series, they could still potentially win.
Sure.
And LeBron has an off series, they have no chance of winning.
No chance.
So yeah, I think the answer is pretty obvious there. I actually think that Brooklyn could potentially get to the NBA Finals without Kevin Durant. It would be a lot harder, but I think they could. Whereas the Lakers would have no chance without LeBron of getting to the NBA Finals.
No. And here's the other thing, too, is to get to the Finals, I think it's going to be tougher for the Lakers because the West is deeper. I mean, you could see the Lakers have to beat the Clippers, Phoenix, and Denver to get to the Finals, whereas Brooklyn, if they're the number 1 seed, would have to beat, say, the Knicks, Miami, and then either Milwaukee or Philly. So the path's a lot easier for Brooklyn because the West is so much deeper.
Yeah, I think that having to go through, if they have to go through Miami in the first, then either Philly or Milwaukee in the second, and then one of those, the Philly or Milwaukee in the finals.
Right.
That's a tough road.
That's tougher, right.
That's the road they want to avoid.
that's why that number one seed in the East is so important, because
Yes.
you don't have to beat both Milwaukee and Philadelphia, right? And maybe play the Knicks in the first round.
You want them to have to play each other.
Exactly. This took place in the 80s. In the 80s, I grew up a Milwaukee Bucks fan with Marcus Johnson and Sidney Moncrief. They could never break through because they had to beat both the Celtics and the 76ers to get to the finals, whereas the Celtics and 76ers kind of alternated years being the one seed, so they'd only have to beat one of those other teams, not both. And that's a situation that Brooklyn will be in this year if they are the number one seed. Now, I don't know if they're all in on the number one seed because Harden's out for a little period of time. I think when he comes back, Kyrie will get a vacation at some point. Maybe he'll have his second birthday of the year because, that can happen.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit different than what they're fighting for. I think Brooklyn, of the three top teams in the East, is the most capable of beating the other two. I think it would be tougher for Philly or Milwaukee to have to beat the other two. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think that's why Philly and Milwaukee, may go all in on that first seed. I think Philly can be the number one seed, and I think they benefit from it. And I'm not counting them out in the Eastern Conference. I think we both agree Brooklyn's the team to beat, should get to the finals. But I think Philadelphia, because they play great defense, and Milwaukee, because they play great defense, I don't think it's as easy for Brooklyn as we're making out to be. Especially, he's a nightmare.
He presents the biggest matchup nightmare of anybody in the Eastern Conference.
In the NBA. I think
maybe
he's
in the NBA,
biggest.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of 7'1", 280-pound dudes that can hit threes and post.
No, I keep saying this. He gave it to
Rudy.
Rudy Gobert. He gave Rudy Gobert the business. He hung 40 on him. And Rudy Gobert is widely, universally considered the best defensive big in basketball.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Williams, who's been playing out of his mind for the Celtics. I'm not yet comparing Robert Williams to Rudy Gobert. By the middle of that Philadelphia Celtics game, Rob Williams looked like he wanted to retire. Because you just can't deal with a guy that size. Right. You cannot deal with a guy that size who has a similar skill set to Hakeem Olajuwon. Not quite the same skill set, but pretty close. And he's bigger.
Yeah.
That's a tough guy to match up against.
So that's that. I mean, obviously, that's going to present a problem for any team. The other guys in Philly are going to have to step up. Your guy Ben Simmons is going to have to step up. But I think the answer in terms of which star will have the bigger impact is it's obvious because of the makeup of the rest of their team. And I don't want to let LeBron off the hook and make it seem like the Lakers are damaged good. They're a damn good team, and they're the defending champions, and they're going to be favored to get to the finals. And if the Nets end up as the favorites in the finals, it's not going to be overwhelming favorites. The Lakers are still going to have a lot of backers, and a lot of money will be placed on the Lakers, and LeBron will be expected to perform at a really, really high level, as he's pretty much always done. So, while the Nets certainly have the more star cachet and probably the deeper team, the Lakers shouldn't be counted out by any stretch of the imagination. But it's LeBron who will have the bigger impact than Kevin Durant. And you've seen that this year is that the Nets have missed Kevin Durant for 2/3 of the season, right? He's played 20 games. 20 games.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And the Nets have been fine. I'm not saying that they'll win a championship without Durant, but the Lakers without LeBron are not very good.
No.
So it's a big difference. All right, Sap. Well, let's move on to this. You wanted to redo and I'm going to ask you why. Why the 2014 draft? You wanted to redo that one, which I love doing this, by the way. It's like one of my favorite exercises to redo drafts. I'm just a draftnik. I'll do it in I don't even know the guys who get drafted in hockey. I'll redo those drafts.
Let's do the baseball draft, right?
Yeah. What the hell? Let's do all 65 rounds of the baseball draft.
Let's do this, yes.
The guys who, never even come out of high school, or they just sort of bum around. They end up owning gas stations in baseball. But I love doing this with the NBA draft. But I am curious why you picked the 2014 one. I'm not saying let's not do it. You could pick any draft. I'm down. I just want to know why 2014.
Well, first of all, it has your favorite player in it, Marcus Smart. So I wanted to see where you would draft him and where I would draft him. So that's, before Embiid and everybody else in the draft. That makes a lot of sense. But the other thing is, you remember the fall of 2013, the Celtics had just hired Brad Stevens. So we all thought they were in tank mode to get the first pick in the draft. And they were. And I remember it was around Thanksgiving. There was a doubleheader on ESPN. I think we were both working at 15:10 at the time or whatever. A few of us went and watched the doubleheader, and I believe it was Duke, Kansas in the first game, and it was Kentucky in the second game. Duke, Kansas, you had Jabari Parker, Andrew Wiggins, Joel Embiid, who would turn out to be the first 3 picks in the draft. So you wanted to see them and say, one of these guys can be a Celtic. And then Kentucky had Julius Randle. So it was really fascinating to see, well, one of these guys is going to end up on the Celtics, and how good were these guys? And they looked impressive that night. I thought Randle looked like the best player. He looked like a man among boys. Randle, to me, is even at that point, is kind of like a poor man's Zion Williamson. He's just not as explosive and as good, but he's got similar type game to him, just not quite as good as Zion. But that's why I wanted to pick that too, because it's a draft that the top part of it is somewhat disappointing, but there were a lot of other players drafted later that have really good careers, which always leads me to say, I know everyone talks about, unless you have one of the top 3 picks, it doesn't mean anything. Well, there's a lot of great players that were drafted mid-first round, late first round, even some into the second round that have gone on and had great players. It's a matter of you get the right guy in the right system, develop them, and then there's a little bit of luck to that as well. So I just figured that this one was a pretty good one. Plus, this is now 7 years ago, so these guys have established enough of their career that you can make an educated guess to where they should have gone. It's not like we're redoing the 2019 draft when the guys are in their third year. It's still a little early to determine how good those guys are going to be. So I think let's try this one.
Yeah, I think a lot of players, it took them a little bit of time in this one to sort of come on, and that when it became clear that Wiggins and Parker weren't what people were expecting, I think everybody looked at it as a really disappointing draft. But the guys who went later in the draft ended up making this draft and turned into a very quality one. So I redid mine, Sap. You said you went 10 deep. I did all 60 picks. So I'll start at number 60 if that's okay
go
with
backwards.
you.
Yeah, because we got nothing else to do the rest of the day. I got a doctor's appointment next Tuesday, so hopefully I'll make it by then.
Yeah,
I do all 60. I knew you'd do that.
I don't love the value of Corey Jefferson at number 60 from the San Antonio Spurs there. I think that there's some undrafted guys they could have done better to take there. So that's what I have at 60.
Free agent.
Yeah.
Free agent. I just figured go 10 deep, and even that exercise
was
difficult.
That's your problem, Sep.
That's right. I'm more of a Mike Ditka guy. Just trade my entire draft for one Ricky Williams, as he did in the late 90s when he was running the Saints. That's the ultimate in being lazy when you trade.
Well,
your
you
entire
remember
draft
it, don't
for
you?
one pick. I do, because I'm really old. And then Ricky Williams showing up in a wedding gown, which was interesting. Ricky Williams
were not a good
Mike
fit,
Ditka,
those personalities.
Not a good fit. No, not at all. Mike Ditka at that point had mailed it in. He became a lazy guy in terms of coaching. He just essentially said, I'll pick one guy and then spend the rest of the draft golfing, which Steve Spurrier did when he was in Washington as well.
We were supposed to, when I was working with Glenn Ordway and I was executive producing his show, we were supposed to have this big show. That's what the name of the show was, actually, the Big Show.
The Big Show.
We were supposed to have this big event with Mike Ditka, who is gonna. We set up at ESPN New Hampshire, and we had cameras and a television crew there, and we were gonna have Mike Ditka was coming on, flying in, and gonna pitch his cigars because he's a cigar company, and do this big interview. We went to ESPN New Hampshire. We have, like I said, the TV cameras. We're doing the show live from there, so it's a remote show. And we get a call about an hour before the show. Mike doesn't feel well today. He didn't get on the plane. Yeah. He's not coming. So
he had too many cigars.
This son of a bitch. He really.
No, I've heard he's not
screwed us all.
Most endearing guy. He was actually going to run.
So we did a crap phone interview.
Yeah, probably on a crap.
On a bad line.
He was going to run against Obama in 2004. Not 2008 as president, but he was going to run against Obama in 2004 for the U.S. Senate in Illinois. He contemplated that and decided not to. That would have been the most interesting political race ever, Obama versus Mike Ditka. I mean, that sounds like something from The Onion, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But yeah, I'll never forget that was like, it's one of the few times that he's an athlete or celebrity or coach or whatever has just completely stiffed me on an interview or something like that.
Yeah,
and it was,
that's not good.
I mean, he made so many people have to run around and miss work, or like it was a pain in the ass getting to New Hampshire and lugging all the equipment and setting up there. And he couldn't even tell us the day before. He told us an hour before. We were all there already. So
yeah, he's probably on a golf course somewhere.
That's my quick Mike Ditka story.
Nice.
But anyways, on to the 59th pick in the 2014.
Yes, you have the first. You go from 60 to 11, and then I'll pick you up in the top 10. But do you want to hear you want to start from 10 backwards?
Yeah.
Give it a little drama? Okay. So let's see here. With number 10, I have Aaron Gordon. Philadelphia had the 10th pick overall. So I got Aaron Gordon at number 10. He actually went 4th to Orlando. I think he was overdrafted. Guy who's more of an athlete than a basketball player. He's had some ups and downs. Has been really good in the dunk contest, but I have him at number 10.
It's going well right now for him in Denver. They haven't lost a game since he's been there. He said yesterday, I'm getting the easiest baskets of my career. So good for Aaron Gordon. And I actually think that he still has some ceiling left in his game, if that makes sense, Seb, that he hasn't necessarily played his best basketball yet. I went 13 deep. How's that for you? Is that fair enough?
Go there.
So I'll catch up to you at 10.
Catch up. Okay.
All right. So at 13, I had Bogdanovic, good player, never going to be an all-star, but a solid role player. He ended up where he was drafted, Sap, was at number 27 to Phoenix. So I'd say he was underdrafted. Then I had Joe Harris at 12. He is a limited player, but he's really good at what he's really good at, which is a three-point gunner. Yes.
Hasn't his value skyrocketed?
Oh, yeah.
The game has changed.
Even
from 2014. Now, 2014, the three was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, of course, I think Steph Curry, changed the game as much as any player in the history of the sport, other than, say, Wilt Chamberlain, who they did have to change the rules for, make the lane that much bigger because Wilt would have dominated even more. But now Harris's value continues to go up because the game has evolved since 2014.
Yeah, he just got a massive contract extension this past offseason. He was drafted in the second round, I think at 30. Let me just double check this. Yeah, 33rd overall to the Cavs. What was GM LeBron asleep at the wheel, letting him go, Sap?
Yeah, that's a mark against LeBron because he actually fit in perfectly there.
He in 2016, I'm looking at his Wikipedia page. Harris underwent season-ending surgery to remove extra bone in his right foot. A week later, he was traded to the Magic, and the Magic just waived him, and he signed with Brooklyn off of the waivers. And look at what an important role he's playing. I mean, he's playing a very important role on this Nets team, and is an extremely valuable player for this NBA. I mean, he's a sniper from three. You cannot leave him open. At 11, I have T.J. Warren. Sap, that's somebody who played the best basketball of his career in the bubble. He's been unfortunately hurt this year. He went 14 overall to Phoenix. They ended up trading him to Indiana last year for what was a bag of peanuts, nothing. I'm sure Phoenix would like to have had him on this Phoenix team that is looking to compete for a championship. So I have him at number 11. I think he's just a gifted scorer. And number 10, I have the guy who was the first overall pick in that draft, Andrew Wiggins. That's who I have at 10.
Wow. We totally disagree on that one. I'll get to Andrew Wiggins a bit later. So that's a surprise you have him at number 10, that you have 9 players that you have above Andrew Wiggins.
I was as high on Andrew Wiggins as anybody, Seth. I thought he was going to be the next superstar LeBron level player in the NBA. I thought, wow, this guy is an elite defender. He can score in a variety of ways. He's an unbelievable athlete. I thought Andrew Wiggins was can't miss, number 1 pick. He's going to be a perennial MVP candidate in the NBA. So I was pretty wrong.
Because they drafted Wiggins with the first overall pick in Cleveland. They had Kyrie Irving. LeBron signed there. And I, in my mind, thought that Wiggins would be to LeBron what Pippen was to Jordan, that he'd come along and nurture him as a player. And Wiggins has elite defensive ability, but it's never really worked. In Minnesota, even with Karl Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler, that was the one year Minnesota made the playoffs. And then Butler got
Jimmy
tired
Butler
of
hated
dealing
his
with young
guts.
players. Well, he hated playing with players like this. I mean, he's been so entitled his entire career. He was the first pick in the draft. He was the most heavily recruited player. I just remember Parker and Wiggins were going to be like the next 2 great players in the NBA. It never happened. I mean, Parker partly because of injuries, and Wiggins. The only thing that turned me off about Wiggins before he got to the NBA, I remember in the tournament that year, and they had Embiid as well, but Embiid was always battling injuries.
Yeah,
Wiggins did not look to be a very competitive guy. Even in the game they lost in March Madness, it looked like he kind of checked out. So
he is Canadian, Sap.
I think he's a really bright kid. I know someone who covered that team. In fact, Tom Keegan, who was a columnist at the Herald, was working in Kansas, in Lawrence at that time,
Right.
covering Kansas athletics. Said a great kid, smart, engaging, but didn't have that killer attitude that you need to elevate. And he just didn't have it. But I have him way higher than that. So we're now down to our final 9. My 9th overall pick is Jordan Clarkson. Charlotte had the 9th pick in that draft, and Clarkson, I believe, was 16th overall. He's actually another guy that continually gets better and is having more impact this year. So I have Clarkson at number 9.
Jordan Clarkson was drafted at number 46 overall.
Oh, 46. That's right. Yeah, 46, which is, again, proves my point that middle of the second round, you can find a player like Jordan Clarkson. So, yeah, 46, not 16.
I'd say a decent value there. He's the runaway sixth man of the year this year.
Right. And getting better, which is, I think that's pretty cool when a guy gets drafted and 7 years later he
is getting better. He does nothing but score. I mean, but he's gotten better at scoring. He literally does nothing but score. He will record games with literally that is his only statistic, his points. He'll be like, he played 35 minutes. He didn't record an assist, but he did take 25 shots.
Reggie Miller played 17, 18 years, is in the Hall of Fame, essentially would average like 3 rebounds and 3 assists a game, and he made it all the way to the Hall of Fame.
I like Clarkson. I like Clarkson. I could see him. He didn't make my list, but I could see why you put him on there. I have nothing wrong with that. At number 9, I have Jusuf Nurkic, a guy who's battled a lot of injuries, but I really love when he plays. I think he's a double-double machine. He's on Portland. He went number 16 in that draft. Mm-hmm. The Bulls took him, and he's bounced around and eventually finding his way to Portland. The biggest issue with him has just been availability. He's a huge guy. I think he's like 7'1", 7'2". He's big.
Yeah, like 285. He's a big guy. Yeah.
And he's strong, and he's an excellent rebounder. He's got excellent post skills. He's just not been able to stay on the court that much, especially recently. But I love his game, and when he's available in the lineup, Portland becomes a very different team than when he's not. So that's who I have there. A guy who was a European player and fell to 16, which I think was undervalued for what his ultimate skill was.
I have him at number 6 because I think his ceiling is so high, and he's such a unique player. I put him at number 6. Number 8 for me is Clint Capella, who has a specific skill set, good rim protector, really good in the lob game. Just a really solid player who keeps getting moved because it seems like the sport's moving away from him. So Clint Capella, who I believe was drafted 25th. I think
he was.
Should have been drafted 8th, and he would have went to Sacramento. So I have Clint Capella at number 8.
One of the few NBA players from Switzerland. Clint Capella.
That's why he doesn't care.
Not a prodigious NBA producing country.
Now, they do have the greatest tennis player ever in Roger Federer, and maybe he doesn't really care who wins. He doesn't care who wins the game.
I wonder if they're friends. Maybe they are.
Maybe they are, yeah. There's not a lot of great Swiss athletes. Stan Wawrinka is also a great tennis player from Switzerland, won a couple of majors.
Good at tennis. But Clint Capella he's somebody I have on my list in a little bit. You'll see him pop up. But at number 8 for me, I have Jeremy Grant, who has shown me in the past few years, or the past year, shown me so much more. Where I thought he was a role player, he's a lot better than a role player. He's an elite defender, and he's a very, very skilled offensive player. And that was what you didn't really see until sort of the bubble last year when he was with Denver, that he could become a force offensively. And he's far and away the best player on this Detroit Pistons team, which is god awful, but he's been the lone bright spot, and he's putting up terrific numbers. Like I said, he is a potential all NBA defensive player. He might win most improved player of the year. Mm-hmm. So he's a two-way guy, really by definition of it. And he's a guy that, like we were talking about with Nurkic and some of these other guys, and Clarkson, took him a little bit of a while to get going. Mm-hmm. And now that he's gotten going and found his footing in the NBA, he's really, really a damn good player, and a player that I think a lot of teams are going to be trying to pry him loose from Detroit next couple of years because they're not going anywhere, and he's on a pretty good contract too. So I really like Jeremy Grant's game a lot, and I think that he was picked at 39. So again,
Amazing,
that just goes to your point. Another guy who's picked pretty low that is turning into a heck of an NBA player. So that's who I have at number 8.
And apparently Danny Ainge was in on him at the trade deadline. But
he was in on him too.
In on everybody.
Everybody was in on this.
He's
so
on
close.
All 450 players in the
couldn't
NBA.
Give up that extra second round pick.
Yeah. The Lakers are ready, willing, and able to trade LeBron, but he's not going to part with one of his many second round picks. Can't do it. Number 7 for me, don't swear at me. Don't disconnect me. I got Marcus Smart at number 7. He was drafted number 6. I would add him going number 7 to the Lakers. I'm not a huge Smart fan. I know you are. Maybe I'm not a huge Smart fan because you are such a big Smart fan.
It's probably why.
It probably is. My nephew is also a huge Marcus Smart fan. So when I bring up that the Celtics have to move on from him, he has a tendency of throwing me out of his house. So that's why I want to get you and my nephew together. You guys have hit it off great. I'm not a big guy in terms of give me the effort guy. I just need production. And I think at some point they have to move on from him. He's got a good contract, a team-friendly contract with 1 year left. I wouldn't be shocked if the Celtics move on from him. We talked a little bit about this earlier before we recorded the podcast. We both thought Marcus Smart would score more in the NBA, not necessarily as a three-point shooter, but more closer to the basket. I think he should post up more. I think he's a really good passer, and he can pass from the post. And I think that's an aspect that they should work on more than just having him, facing the basket from 27 feet and chucking it up there. He's so streaky as a throse shooter that I think they could run more of their offense through him in the post. It would be interesting. But I have him at number 7, and Nurkic I have at number 6, like I said. So those are my 2 players there at 7 and 6. Who do you have at 7 and 6 as well?
At 7, I have Aaron Gordon. You talked about him already.
Right.
I like that again. Like Jeremy Grant, I think he plays both ways. He has elite level athleticism. He might be the most athletic player in the NBA.
He's one of them. Yeah.
So, and I'm gambling on the ceiling with playing with a good team like Denver, in that they can use him in the right way. And that he's never going to be. I don't think he'll make an All-Star game. But I think he can be a really, really big time contributor on a very good team. So we'll see what happens there. But I still like Aaron Gordon, and I think his best basketball is still ahead of him.
You know what's interesting about that, Jet? When you look at a player like Aaron Gordon, so now he goes to Denver. You've got Jamal Murray. You've got Joker. You've got some really good players. You got to the conference finals a year ago. Now a guy like Aaron Gordon comes in, and he's the 3rd or 4th option. And it makes it so much easier for him. It's like a baseball player who is hitting 3rd or 4th on an average to poor team. All of a sudden, he goes to a contending team like the Dodgers or the Padres, and they're hitting 6th or 7th. So less pressure, right? Yeah. So now you can just go out and do your job. If you go 0 for 4, it's not a huge deal. When you're hitting 3rd or 4th, you go 0 for 4, you got to answer questions. So Gordon's probably in a perfect spot right now because most guys in the NBA are not cut out to be the number 1 guy. They were in high school, they were in college, but at this level, they're not. There's not a lot of alphas in the NBA. True alphas. Some fake alphas, but true alphas, there's not a lot of them. So Gordon has done a nice job in Denver. And again, yet another player that Danny Ainge was supposed to be all in on. Of course, that was fake news.
At 6, I have Clint Capella. You talked about him. He's a walking double-double. I like his athleticism a lot. It does seem like teams think the game has passed him by, but I actually disagree with that notion a lot because of his athleticism. He can protect the rim, and what you look for with those guys, the bigs who can't shoot threes, you want to make sure they're athletic and can run at the rim. So for lobs, I think he's really good. I think that's what the Celtics are kind of hoping Robert Williams ends up being, is Clint Capella, which would be really, really nice for them.
Take that, yep.
I think he's an underrated player in the NBA. He gets a ton of rebounds. Yeah, maybe he's not shooting threes, but he's got a little bit of an offensive game, and he's a supreme athlete to the point where you can put him in the pick and roll and lob him the ball, and he should be able to finish at the rim. So I think he's an underrated player. I like him a lot. I value the defense and the athleticism, and I think when you have a guy like that who's so athletic that you can just lob it up, that lob threat, that makes it a lot harder to play defense because you have to be constantly, watching the back door to make sure that doesn't happen to you. So that's what I have at 6. I'm looking, at my 10 through 6. You could really put those guys in any order. They're all pretty close as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, if I went 13 deep, we'd probably have pretty much the same list, just in different orders. So now we're down to our final 5. I've got Zach LaVine at number 5. He's a multiple-time All-Star. He's won a dunk contest, doing a really good job with the Chicago Bulls. There does seem to be something missing from his game. Again, I don't watch a lot of Bulls games. The guy can score. I would have to question how he is defensively. The metrics don't show that his numbers are really that good defensively. But, he's a guy averaging, 27 a game? I don't care what you do on the other end. If you're putting up 27 a game, that's pretty damn good. So I have Zach LaVine at number 5. Again, kind of like Aaron Gordon, one of the best athletes in this league.
Oh yeah. In fact, beat Aaron Gordon in a dunk contest, I believe. At 5, I have Marcus Smart.
Okay, I thought you were going to have him at number 1, but that's good.
I would like to. In my heart, he is. But listen, we all know. I think the defense speaks for itself. Is that he is an elite defender. He's made All NBA, first team All Defense. He's one of the best on ball defenders in the league when he wants to be. This has been the worst year of his career in my mind, and the most frustrating year because since he's been on the Celtics, they haven't missed the playoffs. He's never missed the playoffs in his career, which I think speaks to his impact on the team. He does impact winning, and this year is the first time I can remember where that hasn't really happened all that much. Now, the Celtics probably will end up making the playoffs, keeping that streak alive for him, but he's made so many frustrating plays, and he's gotten hurt. He's had some injury problems. I do think that also, like you said, Sap, he should be a better scorer than he is. He's too confident as a three-point shooter, but to the point where it takes away from the things he's really good at offensively. And he's not as bad of a three-point shooter as people make him out to be. He's around league average as a three-point shooter.
He's just so streaky.
He's streaky. He takes too many of them. But I would like to see him, play in the post more. I think he's the best passer on the Celtics. I think he's the most talented passer they have.
Absolutely.
He would be a really good quarterback, I feel like, too. Like he's tough and he's pinpoint with his passes. When you see him lob the ball, he's the best lobber on the team by far. I mean, he hits guys perfectly in stride when he's trying to throw an alley-oop to Tatum Brown or Rob Williams, the guys who they primarily use on that play. So I think he's got some unbelievable strengths. Like I think he's a elite level defender and a borderline elite level passer. The passing isn't like crazy creative like a LaMelo Ball, but it's really precise and he has a really high basketball IQ. Where he falters is he sometimes he lets his emotions get the best of him to the detriment of the team. To the detriment. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it's to the detriment of the team.
Yep.
He makes poor decisions when to shoot other times as opposed to when to defer. But I still think he's an excellent player. I think he can contribute to any team that's trying to win should want to have Marcus Smart on their team. He's a great complementary player. He just can't be a top 3 player on a team that's trying to compete for a title.
That's the problem, Jet. At this point, he really is their third player because you can't really count on Kemba Walker because he can't play back-to-back. Now, in the postseason, it'll be different, but Kemba's not the player he was 2-3 years ago. The injuries have started to take a lot away from Kemba Walker. So if Marcus Smart's your third best player, that's not really a good option. And then he feels he's the third best player, so now he finds it necessary to take more shots than he should. When he's at his best, he's your fourth or maybe fifth best player. Now you've got something going on there. We've always compared him to Draymond Green. I think Draymond's better. Draymond's even a better passer than Marcus Smart.
I think it's mostly because Draymond's taller, honestly, is why
he's taller.
Draymond's better.
And he's a more versatile defender. I mean, he can guard the post
because he's
better.
taller.
He's taller. Yeah, well, that's part of the reason. I mean, there are really talented guys that are 6'3". Give me the guy.
Stop criticizing Marcus Smart, Seth.
I know. That's true. I know you've got the controls of this podcast, so I know I better keep quiet. I think if you can rein him in, it would benefit the Celtics. But it's tough to rein in a guy like that who plays with so much emotion. It's
Yeah.
like, here's the total package. There's going to be some nice things
For the first
in there,
time,
and there's going to be
I don't
bad
know what
things.
his future holds for him if he's going to be a Celtic long term. I really don't know.
Yeah.
And I thought that maybe a year ago unquestionably he'd be a Celtic for a long haul, but things changed quickly in the NBA, and this season has been really eye opening for the Celtics. So that's who I have at 5.
Okay, you have at 5. I have Julius Randle at number 4, and I remember that draft night. The Celtics were drafting 6th, the Lakers were drafting 7th, and LeBron was not on the Lakers, so I wanted to see the Celtics get the better player at that point. I wanted Julius Randle, and I think Julius Randle quietly, slowly, has become a really, really good player.
Yeah.
As I said, he feels almost like a poor man's version of Zion Williamson. In fact, he's obviously a much better three-point shooter at this point. He's 6-7 years older, so he's much more developed. He made the All-Star team this year. Heck, the Knicks are playing decent basketball with kind of this ragtag roster. So I have Julius Randle at number 4. I loved him at Kentucky on draft night. I was hoping he would be there at 6 for the Celtics. He was, and they took Marcus Smart instead. I think it was a mistake, but I really like Randle, and I like any player that decides to go to New York and performs at a high level. It's not necessarily the easiest place to play. Look, if they're going to give you a big check, you go there anyway. But I give him a lot of credit the last couple of years. He's played really well for the Knicks, and I would have picked him number 4 in this draft.
Yeah, I'm not sure that if he was picked by the Celtics there, that he would have had a lot of success. Because like you said, it's taken a while to really get going. And I don't think that when he came into the NBA that he was ready to sort of make the impact plays that Marcus Smart did as a rookie. Like I said, Marcus Smart's never missed the playoffs.
Right.
Julius Randle, I don't know. Has Julius Randle ever made the playoffs?
The Lakers were god awful when he was there.
So I don't think I don't believe he has.
No, he hasn't, because his first 4 years were with the Lakers, and he's in his second year with the Knicks, and there's one other year in there, maybe 5 with the Lakers. The Pelicans, they didn't make the playoffs either. So, no, I don't think he's made.
So I think that does say a lot. Smart's made the playoffs every year of his career. Randle has never made the playoffs. I'm not saying that means he's better, but I'm saying that
played with better players. And
I'm saying that it does. That first Marcus Smart team, though, with the Celtics when they made the playoffs, that was not a good team. I mean, Isaiah Thomas was very good, but the rest of the team was like Amir Johnson was starting on that team.
They were the 8th seed, right? And they played Cleveland in the first round, and Mike Gorman famously said that he thought that the Celtics would beat the number 1 seeded Cavaliers.
They almost did.
They almost did. They only got swept, lost by an average of 10 points per game.
It was a tough sweep.
Series. It was a tough sweep, right? It was a very closely contested sweep. I mean, Julius Randle was playing on a Laker team which was god awful in a better conference. So Marcus Smart is a winning player. I think Randle is showing now that he's a winning player too. So I have him. I have a 4 too, Seth, because I think he's he's becoming a very reliable double. Yeah, really good offensive player. He's an all-star this year. I don't think Marcus Smart's ever going to make the all-star game. What about his passing? He's through the roof this year. He's averaging 5-6 assists a game. I mean, if not more. He's had triple doubles. It's
I think that's a lot of Tom Thibodeau's system has made it is really tailor-made for him to do a good job there. And he's a talented player. I've never been super impressed with his physical fitness, I would say. I think this year it's a little bit better. I thought he was a little doughy coming into the NBA. Now he's turned that into muscle. He makes tough shots. I like Julius Randle a lot. Listen, he's an all-star. You can't take that away from him. He deserved it, and he's put the Knicks in a position to make the playoffs when no one thought they would sniff the playoffs this year.
So you have him as number 4 as well.
As number 4. I do have a quick exercise, Sap, if you will allow me. Just actually more of a question for you. You're the LeBron guy. Would you rather the team as it is? Would you rather the team as it is right now, LeBron and AD, or would you rather LeBron, Randle, Ingram, Ball, Hart?
No, Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis over all those guys.
Yeah,
combined.
Because you can get similar type players to those other guys. And look, I'm high on Randle, Ingram, but I think it's at times difficult to play with LeBron James. Right. I've got all 3 of those Pelicans along with Zion Williamson in my top 16, and Josh Hart's a really nice player.
Because that would seem to be a more balanced team, right? That has all those guys.
And it would be pretty amazing if LeBron took all these young players that the Lakers had, went there, and took them to a championship.
I mean, obviously he was unwilling to do it, but
I think as you get older, look, I mean, we can make the case Tom Brady didn't want to.
No, I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying it's a fact.
I'm just saying, but when you're that established, and you're playing at a certainly high level, you don't want to babysit young players.
Yeah.
So you saw Tom Brady with, say, N'Keal Harry and the rest of the garbage down in Foxborough say, I got to get out of here. I need established guys. Later in my career, you don't have the patience.
Right.
And I think that was probably the case with LeBron. And look, LeBron, AD, you can fill in the pieces. That's how NBA teams are built, with two great players and then role guys. But it is interesting because the Lakers were always just off on the drafts, though, right? Like they kept getting the second pick in the draft, not the first.
Yeah,
because Ingram was the second pick. Ball was the second pick. Who was the guard that ended up? Where is he now? Is he in Golden State or Minnesota?
D'Angelo Russell.
Yes, he was also. They kept getting the second pick, not the first. So there can be a difference there. But no, that's an interesting question. It would have been more impressive if LeBron won with him and all those other guys than with AD. But AD had never really won anything either. I mean, what did he win? One series in New Orleans. So, but we know he's at a different level than the rest of these players.
Yeah,
because he was the first pick in the draft.
I just think it's an interesting thing because if the Lakers had so chosen, that could have been the direction they gone, was LeBron and a bunch of the young guys, Randall, Ingram, Ball, Hart, and
they worked that out before he got there. I'm sure they worked that out before he got there. He got there. Magic Johnson, who was running the Lakers at that point, probably said, LeBron, we're going to go after AD. We'll put the pieces around you that you want. We're not going to just force you into trying to drag these young guys around that aren't really ready to win. And as we've seen, a lot of these guys that are on this list as we redraft the 2014 draft are now starting to be, good players. It takes time, let alone someone like Ingram, who was drafted in 16, or Ball, who was drafted in 17. It takes even longer for those guys to get to the level they need
I
to.
do think for a good period of time, Sap, for the first 3 years, maybe of his career, maybe even 4, Marcus Smart was the third guy on this list because other guys hadn't come on yet.
Right, yeah. And again, he played, 2 years at Oklahoma State?
I believe so, yep.
Right, so he was a little bit further along than the one-and-dones.
Yeah.
So, like Wiggins was one and done, Parker was one and done, Gordon was one and done. The guy we left off this is Dante Exum, who was the 5th pick in the draft, who's had a
Australian
disappointing career. Yeah, I mean, be careful.
Oh yeah, and he doesn't. He may have been the worst pick in the draft, honestly.
Probably, yeah. He was the 5th pick in the draft, and he's nowhere near this. So my top 3, I don't think we're going to disagree on the top 2. We may have a different order in the top 2. I have Andrew Wiggins at number 3, and I know he's been a disappointment, but let's look at what he has done.
Yeah, we have him way different.
Way different. He's been a 20-point-per-game scorer. He can play really good defense. I just think that he went to the wrong place. I mean, if he had been able to go – if Cleveland had kept him rather than trade him for Kevin Love, maybe his career is completely different. Maybe LeBron and Kyrie are still together in Cleveland. Probably not, because I don't know how long they could last together. But – if he had just been able to stay in Cleveland with LeBron and Kyrie, maybe his career is completely different. Number 2, I've got Nikola Jokic, and number 1, I've got Embiid. Embiid's ceiling is higher than anybody else in this draft, and he's showing it this year. Although Jokic was drafted, 41?
Yeah.
In that draft. Is that amazing that at 41 you get a guy who right now may be the MVP of the league?
Yeah, you could make the argument that's one of the greatest picks of all time, actually.
Without question. I mean, the guy's phenomenal. He's right now the favorite to be league MVP. I'm going to have to do some research on that. Is of all the league MVPs, has anybody been drafted that low? And probably not, because
I don't think so.
I can't think of anybody. I mean, Kareem has 6 of them. Jordan has 5. Russell has 5. Chamberlain has 5. LeBron has 4.
Steve Nash was a lottery pick, even. I mean, he was a late lottery pick, but he's a lottery pick.
Exactly. Derrick Rose who was the only MVP that probably won't make the Hall of Fame, was number 1.
Kobe was a late lottery pick.
13. Bird won 3. Bird was the 6th pick in his draft, but it was a junior eligible. He played another year and then came to the Celtics. So Magic has 3 MVPs. He was number 1. Barkley, Karl Malone. Yeah, I can't think of anyone that won an MVP that was anywhere close to being the
nowhere close to it
in the draft. Not even close. Interesting. So, another column, Jet. Thank you.
Man, I am just full of these ideas. I say something and it just lights up an idea in your head.
You're full of ideas. I'm full of shit. So
yeah, I have Zach LaVine at 3. I think he's just become morphed into a really elite level scorer. Randall is better rebounder. Levine's a better scorer. I think that they're both. Levine can be a good defensive player, chooses sort of not to be a good defensive player. The Bulls also are have been hot garbage, and before that he was on the Timberwolves, who were also hot garbage. So it's not like he's ever played on a really good team. I'm curious to see what he would be like on a good team, and maybe with Vucevic now, they will be a decent team. So we'll see. But I like Zach LaVine. Like you said, 27 points a game. That's a lot of points to score in the NBA. I mean, that's nothing you can sniff at. So Zach LaVine, just the scoring ceiling is really good. We just have it flip flopped at 1 and 2. I have Embiid at 2. Jokic at 1, purely based off of Jokic has been more consistent and available, and Embiid hasn't. And so Embiid has been dominant this year. I'm not going to put him ahead of Jokic, who's been consistently better. Jokic has been has been more available. He's probably going to win MVP this year, so that will put him 1-0 over Embiid. Embiid's, I don't believe the Sixers have ever been to the conference finals.
No, they lost in the second round to
the Raptors.
Toronto. Yep.
And Jokic has been to the conference finals, so he's had a little bit more success. So it just flip-flop. They're both fantastic players. They're the two best centers in the league. No one is a close third. Jokic obviously might have the most unique skill set in the league, one of the most unique skill sets of any NBA player to ever come into the league, because he's a point guard level passing, an elite level point guard passing from the center position. He can shoot the three. He can play in the post. He can rebound. He can block shots. He can do everything. And Embiid's just is a dominant game. Jokic is a varied game. Embiid is a dominant game. And they both dominate in their own way, just different. You can't go wrong with either of those guys, but to me, it's those guys 1 and 2, and everybody else is pretty distant after them. And I like Levine and Randall and Smart and Capella, Gordon, Grant, but they're all way back of Embiid and Jokic.
Yeah, because these are the only two players that will contend for an MVP ever. Right, and
I don't think you could package the rest of the guys together and trade for. If your roster had Levine, Randall, Smart, Capella, Gordon, Grant, Nurkic, Wiggins, I don't think that you could say, hey, we'll give you all these guys for Embiid. The Sixers would say no.
No, Embiid is that good, and again, they're the two front runners for league MVP. And a good question is, which one of these great players is closest to winning a title? Now, maybe Embiid, because the East is not as strong as the West. But that's a fascinating question, and I think they're both contenders this year, although in the second tier below Brooklyn.
They were
and the Lakers.
Our sneaky picks, right, when we did this the other day, and I took the Nuggets as my sort of sneaky team in the West, and you took the Sixers as the team that could dethrone the Nets. Not that they've won anything yet, but everybody thinks they're going to in the East. So I totally I think either one of them could win a title. I think they're both fully capable of being the best player on a championship team. So it's now up to the teams to surround them with the appropriate talent to get them there. But I don't think that anybody would doubt that you could win a title with Jokic as your best player or Embiid as your best player. They're at that level that's, above all-star to superstar level. Embiid was the front runner before he got hurt for MVP, and Jokic has again proven to be very, very durable, despite him looking like, just a kind of doughy dude. That he's available, and every game he puts up monster numbers. So those two guys, pretty obvious. I don't think that there's a wrong answer in saying one over the other, but the fact that Embiid was the third pick and probably would have been the first pick had he not had the injury concerns in that draft, and Jokic was the 41st pick, shows that the NBA still has a ways to go in how they effectively evaluate players.
Before we wrap up, imagine if Embiid was healthy and Cleveland took him. LeBron re-signs with Cleveland, so you'd have LeBron, Embiid, Kyrie Irving, and it stays together for a while.
I think he would have forced the trade too. I think he would have made them trade Embiid as well for Love. I think he wasn't. I don't think LeBron wanted to play with a rookie.
And Embiid really was no factor his first 2.5 years because of injuries.
No. But no, that combo would be incredible. You're right.
Talk about a big three. That's a perfect big three, right? You got the small guard who is unguardable.
Well,
You get the
until he
best
ruins
player
it.
ever.
Kyrie ruins.
Until he's like, why are these two guys better than me? I'm better than them. Well, maybe part of it is because they're a lot bigger than you too. But that would be fascinating. A lot of what ifs. So that's why I thought this was a fun exercise.
Yeah, I think the thing that we probably made the most clear is that we have vastly different opinions of Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
And that there were a lot of quality picks later in the draft in this pick. Like the top part, so Wiggins and Parker didn't sniff either of our lists. I mean, he's been hurt, but he's just never really shown all that much. Exum didn't sniff our list. Nick Stauskas was taken 8. Noah Vonleh was taken 9. There were guys in the top 10. Alfred Payton, who's still hanging around the league. Then Doug McDermott, Dario Saric. A lot of guys who went higher than guys on our list are either not in the league or barely hanging on. And the second round yielded some really good players, Sap. That's going to do it for this edition of the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out our podcast and other great podcasts and articles on fullpresscoverage.com. Follow me on Twitter at Jet Stryer. Follow Sap on Twitter at JohnSap25. That's JOHNSAP 25. See the YouTube version of this with Sap's awesome door behind him, my posters and banners and stuff behind me, youtube.com/Jet Stryer. And also we're just wherever podcasts are. So Spotify, Spreaker, you can find it all there. And make sure to interact with us. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Tell us what you want to hear. We will get back to you. And appreciate everybody for checking out the show. We will see you later in the week. Take care, everybody.